Welcome to Medieval World History, where history comes alive with stories that are anything but boring. In today's video, we're diving into the fascinating legacy of a very special name in papal history, the popes named Leo. From Leo VII, the saint who famously confronted Attila the Hun, all the way to Leo XIV, who reigned during the turbulence of the 19th century. Spanning over 1,400 years and 14 papacies, the name Leo has become a symbol of strength, leadership, and sometimes controversy. These popes have shaped not only the Church but also the course of European history, through bold reforms, dramatic decisions, and even scandalous moments that shook the Vatican to its core. So why was the name Leo chosen again and again? And what made each Leo unique in the grand story of the Catholic Church? Let's rewind time and uncover all these incredible stories, starting right now.
As many of you know, the Catholic Church has just selected a new pope. Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost has become the 267th pontiff of the Catholic Church and has taken the name Pope Leo XIV. So I thought it would be fun to do a history video in his honor, going through every Pope Leo the Church has ever had. In this way, we can learn a little more about the Church's history, as well as perhaps see what kind of pope we may be able to expect now. Pope Leo I, otherwise known as the Great, from 440 to 461, the first pope whose own writings, about 170 letters and nearly 100 recorded sermons, outline a deliberate papal program. Leo issued several dogmatic letters that served the role later taken by papal bulls. Foremost is the Tome of Leo, or the Epistula Dogmatica ad Flavianum, from 449, which defined that Christ is one person in two complete natures, divine and human. When the Council of Chalcedon at 451 read it aloud, the bishops shouted, "Peter has spoken through Leo," and wove the tome verbatim into the council's decree. Because Leo spoke officially for the whole Church, Catholics regard this as an ex cathedra definition in plain language, a statement the Pope makes from the chair of Peter that believers see as safeguarded from error. Leo also circulated letters condemning Manichaeism in 444 and Pelagianism in 447, ordering bishops to root out those groups and burn their writings. And he reasserted Roman primacy by insisting that appeals from Gaul or Spain be judged only in Rome. Liturgically, he reorganized the Roman Missal, fixed the 25th of December as the Nativity Feast, and promoted veneration of Saints Peter and Paul. Outside church governance, he famously rode north to meet Attila the Hun at the Mincio River in 452. Tradition says Attila withdrew after Leo's plea, aided by visions of Peter and Paul, and in 455, he brokered an agreement with the Vandal king Genseric that limited the sack of Rome to 2 weeks. These doctrinal, administrative, and diplomatic feats earned Leo the honorary title of Doctor of the Church. In simple terms, he cemented the idea that Jesus is fully God and fully man, and that the Bishop of Rome is the chief guardian of that truth. Pope Leo II, from 682 to 683, a Sicilian linguist turned pontiff, Leo II spent the first 8 months of his pontificate finishing work begun by his predecessor, Agatho. His first act was to confirm the decrees of the Third Council of Constantinople, which had happened in 680 to 681, which had condemned monothelitism, the claim that Christ had only one will. Leo circulated letters to Spain, Gaul, and the Visigothic court, asking every bishop to sign the council's profession that Jesus possesses both a fully divine and a fully human will. For everyday Catholics, this simply safeguards the belief that Christ is entirely God and entirely human in everything, including the way he chooses. He also ratified the council's anathema of Pope Honorius I, clarifying that Honorius was guilty not of teaching heresy, but of failing to suppress it, a distinction Leo said upheld the principle that popes must actively defend orthodoxy administratively. Leo persuaded Emperor Constantine IV to abolish the imperial confirmation tax on new popes and quelled Ravenna's bid for independence by restoring its archbishop to Roman obedience. He reorganized the Scala Cantorum, composed new Latin hymns, and refined Gregorian chant so worshippers could, quote, pray twice through clearer music. In response to Lombard raids, he transferred the relics of martyrs from vulnerable catacombs into city churches and dedicated 2 rebuilt basilicas, St. Paul's outside the walls, and the joint church of St. Sebastian and George. Leo's reign lasted barely 10 months, so he issued no formal papal bulls and made no ex cathedra definitions, yet his swift promulgation of Constantinople III's decrees ensured universal acceptance throughout the West and cemented papal cooperation with ecumenical councils. Pope Leo III from 795 to 816, a Rome-born cleric from the modest Colonna district, Leo was elected on Christmas of 795 and immediately sought Frankish protection to counter Rome's fractious nobility. In April 25th of 799, a rival gang mauled him during the Greater Litanies, trying to blind and tongue-cut him. Leo escaped to King Charlemagne's camp at Paderborn, where the king promised armed support. Back in Rome, Leo convened a December synod in 800, at which he swore an oath of purgation against the nobles' charges. Then on Christmas Day dramatically crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans. For layfolk, this meant Europe once again had a Western emperor, and, just as important, the Pope now wielded the moral authority to bestow crowns upon kings. Doctrinally, he fought two frontline heresies. A Roman council of 798 condemned adoptionism, the idea that Christ's humanity was merely adopted by the divine word, anathematizing its champion Felix of Urgel, and ordering all bishops to preach that Jesus is one divine person from conception, not adoption. The simple version of this is that Jesus didn't ever get promoted to the Son of God. He always was. Then when the Council of Aachen in 809 inserted filioque and from the Son into the creed, Leo judged the doctrine orthodox, yet refused to alter the creed's text. To make the point, he had the original Greek-Latin creed engraved on two 94-pound silver shields and bolted above St. Peter's Gate, a vivid lesson that popes guard inherited formulas, even while explaining new insights. Leo issued a stream of privilege charters, the early form of papal bulls, confirming lands and immunities for monasteries such as Glastonbury and St. Denis, re-established Ravenna and Benevento as suffragan sees, and in England reversed his predecessor's creation of a third archbishopric at Lichfield, restoring the traditional two-metropolitan structure of Canterbury and York in 803. He also dispatched legates to Corsica and Sardinia against Muslim raids, and sent the pallium to newly evangelized bishops in Croatia. No statements from his reign are classified today as ex cathedra, but his coronation of Charlemagne and his silver shield credo together underscored the practical meaning of papal primacy. The Pope safeguards doctrine, arbitrates disputes, and can elevate political authority when the Church's good requires it. Pope Leo IV from 847 to 855, a Benedictine Roman cleric elected after the Saracen sack of 846, Leo raced to rebuild Rome's battered basilicas and ringed the Vatican Hill with the Leonine Wall, a 4-year project whose new suburb, the Leonine City, turned St. Peter's into a fortress. To keep raiders off the coast, he forged a naval league of Naples, Geisha, and Amalfi. Their combined fleet, helped by a sudden storm, crushed the Saracens at the Battle of Ostia in 849, a victory later immortalized by Raphael. Leo convened 3 Roman synods. The chief, in 850, attended by Emperor Louis II, issued canons against simony, ordered bishops to found schools, and tightened monastic and clerical discipline. Plainly, he told priests, "Stop buying offices, live uprightly and educate your flock." He sealed these reforms and dozens of land grants in privilege bulls for monasteries such as Farfa and Monte Cassino, reinforcing papal control of church property. In 850 he also crowned Louis II's co-emperor, and in 853 he adopted and anointed the young Alfred, later the Great, during the English prince's pilgrimage. Symbolic acts showing that popes could legitimize rulers across Europe. Leo made no ex cathedra pronouncements, but by walling the Vatican, rallying Christian natives, and sharpening church discipline, he proved the Pope could defend both the faith and the city in very concrete ways. Pope Leo V was only pope from August to September of 903. He was a parish priest from Priapi near Ardea. Leo was elected amid the violent faction fights that marked the opening of the Saeculum Obscurum, or the Dark Age of the papacy. In his one surviving act, he issued the Epistola Tuitionis, a kind of early papal bull, granting the canons of Bologna tax exemption, which for ordinary people meant Rome could still protect local churches, even when popes changed quickly. Barely 2 months later, Cardinal priest Christopher seized him, declared himself pope, and threw Leo into prison. Contemporary lists long treated Christopher as a legitimate successor, but modern scholarship labels him an anti-pope or an uncanonical claimant. Whether Leo was murdered in custody or died naturally, he was dead by early 904, when Sergius III deposed Christopher and took the throne for himself. Leo convened no councils, left no reforms, and made no ex cathedra statements. Yet his fleeting reign highlights how papal authority, though often fragile, still worked through formal letters, safeguarding church rights even in chaos. Pope Leo VI was pope from June of 928 to February of 929, another short reign, elevated from cardinal priest of Santa Susanna by Rome's power broker Marozia. Leo governed scarcely 8 months during the Saeculum Obscurum, yet managed 2 lasting acts. First, he confirmed the Second Council of Split, or Spalato, in 928, sending the pallium to Archbishop John of Salona, abolishing the upstart See of Nin, and ordering every Dalmatian bishop to obey Split, thus settling who led the Croatian church in plain terms. 1 archbishop, no rivals. Second, through a privilege bull for the French abbey of Déols, he guaranteed the monks' right to elect their own abbots and exempted their lands from local taxes, modeling papal protection of reform-minded monastery. He also banned marriage for castrati singers and issued a circular promising heaven for anyone who fell defending Rome against Arab raids, an attempt to rally militias while the papacy lacked armies. Leo convened no synods in Rome and made no ex cathedra pronouncements, but his quick arbitration in Dalmatia and his property charters show even a short-lived pope could still clarify hierarchy and safeguard church rights amid 10th century chaos. Pope Leo VII, who was pope from 936 to 939, was chosen with the backing of Rome's strongman Alberic II. Leo was a reluctant Benedictine who turned his short pontificate into a bridge-building mission. His very first act was to summon Abbot Odo of Cluny to broker peace between Alberic and King Hugh of Italy. Odo's settlement, including the marriage of Hugh's daughter, Elda of Alberic, ended the siege of Rome and forged a lasting papal-Cluniac alliance that would shape 11th century reform. Most of Leo's papal bulls were simple privilege charters, gifting land or tax immunity to monasteries, especially at Cluny, so monks could pray and reform without lay interference. For lay readers, a bull was a sealed letter guaranteeing a church's rights, the way a deed secures a house. Beyond Italy, Leo commissioned Archbishop Frederick of Maine to cleanse simony in Germany and controversially permitted civic leaders to expel Jews who refused baptism, though he barred forced conversions, illustrating how medieval popes often balanced reform zeal with the era's limited tolerance. Leo convened no major councils and issued no ex cathedra dogmas, but by calming civil war, backing Cluniac renewal, and protecting monastic property, he showed how even a 3-year pope could study the Church's moral compass amidst the turmoil of the 10th century in Europe. Pope Leo VIII, from 963 to 965, thrust onto the throne by Emperor Otto I. Leo VIII was still a lay palace notary when the Synod of Rome, from 6th of November to 4th of December 963, deposed the scandal-plagued John XII. Otto had Leo VIII tonsured, ordained deacon, priest, bishop, and consecrated pope all in a single day, an act that later let critics peg him an anti-pope. His first bulls showed privileges on Otto. They confirmed imperial control of papal and episcopal elections, and even, in documents later styled Privilegium Maius, Minus, and Cessatio Donationum, appeared to cede large swaths of the papal states to the emperor. Modern scholars judge those texts heavily interpolated, if not forged outright during the later investiture controversy. Yet, they show how both sides tried to anchor imperial investiture in papal parchment. When John XII retook Rome early in 964, Leo VIII fled. The Romans chose Benedict V. Otto returned in June, convened another synod, deposed Benedict, and reinstalled Leo VIII, whose second tenure the Church now counts as canonical. Leo issued routine property bulls and restored confiscated estates to several Roman churches, but promulgated no councils of his own, and made no ex cathedra definition. He died peacefully on the 1st of March in 965 and was praised in the Liber Pontificalis as energetic and honorable. For lay readers, his tumultuous reign illustrates a simple lesson. In the 10th century, the question, who picks the Pope, was still wide open, and parchment claims, real or forged, could decide who wore the tiara. Pope Leo IX, who was Pope from 1049 to 1054, was born an Alsatian noble, Bruno of Egeischein. He arrived in Rome barefoot as a pilgrim and insisted on a free election before accepting the tiara, setting the tone for a reforming pontificate. He spent most of his reign on the road, presiding over a rapid-fire series of synods. Rome and Pavia in Easter of 1049, Reims and Mainz in October of 1049, Versailles in Rome again in 1050, that outlawed simony, demanded clerical celibacy, and censured Berengar of Tours, denial of Christ's real presence. For ordinary Catholics, these meetings meant priests could no longer buy offices or get married, and the Eucharist was affirmed as truly Jesus's body and blood. Leo's bulls mainly confirmed monastic exemptions, but he also issued the privilege in te conviene, granting Cluny sweeping autonomy as a model for reform. Politically, he led an army against Norman adventurers in southern Italy, was defeated and honorably imprisoned at Civitate in 1053, yet forced the Normans to swear fealty before releasing him. His last act was dispatching Cardinal Humbert of Constantinople, the legate's bull of excommunication, on 16th of July 1054, exchanged with Patriarch Michael Cerularius, triggered the Great East-West Schism, a rift that still divides Catholic and Orthodox Christians to this day. Leo issued no ex cathedra dogma, but by attacking corruption, defending doctrine, and asserting papal primacy, he laid the cornerstone for the later Gregorian reform. Pope Leo X, who was pope from 1513 to 1521, born Giovanni de' Medici, he brought Renaissance opulence to the papacy, funneling huge sums into Raphael's frescoes, Michelangelo's facade for San Lorenzo, and the rebuilding of St. Peter's, funded largely by a fresh indulgence campaign, which was paying money as a penance substitute, which critics felt turned forgiveness into a cash bag. Leo wrapped up the Fifth Lateran Council in 1512-17, whose decrees included Apostolici Regiminus in 1513, affirming the soul's immortality, and Inter Multiplices in 1515, legitimizing charitable pawn banks, or Monte di Pieta, to combat usury, practical rulings that for ordinary Catholics meant church-run loans were licit, and that every human person is more than matter. A 1516 bull confirmed the Concordat of Bologna, trading France's support against conciliarism for royal sway over French bishopric. Leo X's most fateful acts targeted Martin Luther. The bull Exsurge Domine of 15 June 1520 condemned 41 Lutheran propositions and gave the friars 60 days to recant, while Decet Romanum Pontificem on the 3rd of January 1521 formally excommunicated him. After Luther had burned the first bull. To lay minds, Leo was declaring these teachings endanger salvation, choose church or break away. Though he issued no ex cathedra dogma, his bulls carried the full weight of papal authority and crystallized the split that became the Protestant Reformation. Leo died amid mounting debts, remembered both as a lavish patron and as the Pope, whose fundraising lit the spark of revolt. Moving on to Pope Leo XI, also known as Papa Lampo, who was only pope from the 1st of April 1605 to the 27th of April 1605, so a very short reign. Born Alessandro Ottaviano de' Medici of the Florentine ruling house, he had been bishop, archbishop, papal legate to France, and cardinal prefect of the Congregation of Bishops, before a conclave split between French and Spanish factions elected him at age 69. He chose the name Leo XI to honor his kinsman Leo X and adopted the motto Flos Florum, or Flower of Flowers, the Medici lily, soon after the lavish procession to take possession of St. John Lateran. He caught a fever and died, giving him the nickname Lightning Pope for one of history's 9 shortest pontificates. In his 27 days he had no time to summon a council or issue a formal papal bull, nor did he define any doctrine ex cathedra. His lone recorded policy move was refusing requests to make his grandnephew a cardinal, a blunt signal that he meant to curb nepotism in the church, a reformist gesture ordinary Catholics could understand as no family favoritism at the top. Though his reign flashed by, contemporaries praised his piety, his earlier efforts to reconcile France and the Holy See, and his intent to continue Clement VIII's church reforms. Pope Leo XII, from 1823 to 1829, Spolito-born Annibale della Genga, came to the throne as the conservatives' champion after the Napoleonic upheavals. Within months, he summoned the 1825 Holy Year, calling more than 500,000 pilgrims, with the bull Quod Hoc Iniunte, and later widening its indulgences through Charitate Christi. For ordinary Catholics, a jubilee meant walking through the holy door, confessing and receiving what felt like a spiritual reset. His 6 principal bulls or encyclicals formed a tightly woven program. Ubi Primum of 1824 urged bishops to guard doctrine. Quod Divina Sapientia of the 28th of August 1824 created the Congregation of Studies, putting every university in the Papal States under clerical supervision. Ad Plurimas of 1825 begged funds to rebuild fire-ravaged St. Paul outside the walls. Quo Graviora in 1826 excommunicated Catholics who joined Freemasons or other secret societies, and Quantel Laetitia of 1827 restored a regular hierarchy in Scotland. Marking the Jubilee, Leo personally toured Rome's hospitals and ordered 8 large institutions to merge, an early papal foray into public health reform. Domestically, he revived strict press censorship, reimposed property bans on Jews, and relied on Cardinal Rivarola's police to crush Carbonari rebels, signaling that the Papal States would meet liberal unrest with a law and order fist. He convened no council and, since papal infallibility would not be defined until 1870, made no ex cathedra pronouncements. Yet, by yoking pilgrimage, education, and social control to a single conservative vision, Leo XII left a clear layman's takeaway. Rome meant to rebuild both bricks and souls on pre-revolution lines. Pope Leo XIII, who was pope from 1878 to 1903, he was elected at the age of 68 after Pius IX's combative reign. Vincenzo Gioacchino Pecci steered the church onto a new diplomatic and intellectual footing. His program came in landmark encyclicals rather than councils. Attorney Patris, in 1879, made St. Thomas Aquinas the gold standard for Catholic philosophy. Immortali Dei, in 1885, set out how church and state can cooperate without theocracy. Providentissimus Deus, in 1893, urged pastors to read scripture with modern critical tools, yet firm faith. And most famously, Rerum Novarum, in 1891, declared that workers have a right to a living wage, to form unions, and to own property. Explained simply, capital and labor must treat each other like partners, not enemies. Other bulls included Apostolicae Curae in 1896, which ruled Anglican priestly orders absolutely null, and Orientalium Dignitas in 1894, protecting the liturgies of Eastern Catholics from Latinization. He restored the full hierarchy in Scotland, ex supremo apostolatus apis, in 1878, opened the Vatican archives to scholars in 1883, urged the study of history, and brokered concordats from Haiti to Portugal, while re-establishing relations with Switzerland, Germany, and Russia. Though papal infallibility had been defined in 1870, Leo XIII issued no ex cathedra dogma. Instead, he modeled ordinary magisterium that speaks authoritatively without final dogmatic definition. Living to the age of 93, he was nicknamed the Worker Pope and the Scholar of Rome, leaving lay Catholics a clear message: faith and modern social problems can meet through reason, justice, and dialogue. Which brings us finally to Pope Leo XIV, who was of course elected on the 8th of May 2025 after only 2 ballots. The Chicago-born Augustinian Robert Francis Prevost became the first American and the first member of his order to wear the papal tiara. In his balcony greeting, Pax Vobiscum, meaning peace be with you, he pledged to build bridges, welcome everyone, and walk together, signaling continuity with Francis's synodal reforms and with Leo XIII's social justice legacy, which His choice of name deliberately evokes. So far, Leo XIV has announced the inauguration Mass, which will be on the 12th of May, and confirmed that he will personally open the holy doors for the already proclaimed 2025 Jubilee of Hope in December, framing it as a year to heal division and restore creation. He has not yet issued any papal bulls, encyclicals, or ex cathedra definitions, but Vatican officials say his first major document, expected to be an apostolic constitution on synodality and episcopal accountability, is in draft. For lay Catholics, this means that while no new dogma has been proclaimed yet, the Pope is preparing rules that will give ordinary faithful and women greater voice in choosing bishops and in setting parish priorities. Within hours of his election, he reconfirmed the October 2025 concluding assembly of the Global Synod and Synodality and ordered a financial audit of the Vatican Pension Fund, underscoring transparency and trust. Diplomatically, he sent telegrams urging ceasefires in Gaza and Sudan and phoned ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew to restart Catholic Orthodox dialogue, stalled since 2021. In short, although formal documents are still forthcoming, Leo XIV's early acts and words sketch a papacy focused on bridge building, social justice, and shared decision-making, a practical roadmap before the ink of his first bull is even dry. And that brings us all the way up to the current date. So, history has already been made in 2025, seeing both the first American Pope and the first Augustinian Pope to be elected to lead the Church. It is, of course, far too early to look at Pope Leo XIV through the lens of history, and only time will tell how he is remembered. But as a faithful Catholic, it is my honor to pray for His Holiness Pope Leo XIV, and furthermore to pray that as Christ's vicar on earth and the visible head of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, Christ speaks and acts through him in unifying the Church, anchoring it in clarity and orthodoxy for years to come.